The topic for today is playing Twister with God. Ernest Holmes wrote, God sings all the songs, dances all the dances, paints all pictures, creates all art, writes every book, plays every game. Victor Shaman's wrote, play is a sacred act. When we are playing, the essence of all creation flows freely through us. We are expressing our true nature and connecting with the very core of our existence. Nothing is more spiritual than that. Taylor de Shorter offers this wisdom. Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. Let's affirm together. I am having fun
with the divine.
And at this time, I get to introduce our lovely, beautiful, lovely
Certainly woke us all up.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. I watched the and I love this. You know, when I first thought about it, there was so much that went through my mind about this theme. I'm thinking, you know, with all that's going on in the world, maybe we should be focusing on world peace. We actually do have quite a few things that are going on around world peace. Marianne is leading us in these, and that kind of thing, and there are all kinds of opportunities. And actually, when you think about it, in order to maintain balance in our lives, I think it is a really good idea for us to focus on play. This is a theme that was planned quite a long time ago. But I think it's with great divine timing that we're focused on play. And I'll give you a little bit of a background on that. First of all, I want to give you some context. How many of you have read Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins? Okay, a few of us have. Very powerful, life-changing book. In fact, I understand that if you read it, you're willing to read it, and absorb the material, it will raise your consciousness level by 35 points. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but you'll find out that each point is exponential in terms of your impact on counterbalancing consciousness, negative consciousness on the planet. So David Hawkins, for those of you who don't know who he, by the way, I have one more thing to say before I do that. So we pray for peace, yes, and we meditate for peace, and at the same time it's important to cultivate joy. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because there is someone who, to me, typifies that willingness to live in joy, and that is the Dalai Lama. So many of you may know that sometimes as he would walk through crowds, maybe not more recently, but he used to walk through crowds and act silly. And some of the other spiritual masters who were with us said, why are you acting so silly? And he said, because joy is a really important thing. Happiness is very important. So he typified this being a master of spreading joy, being in the presence of joy and spreading joy. Okay, now, Dr. David Hawkins. Dr. David Hawkins is a renowned psychotherapist who became a mystic after a very profound spiritual awakening. And what happened is he was observing somebody doing kinesiology, muscle testing. And he began to experiment with it and realized that it's tapping into the universal mind, that you're actually able to access universal mind through this modality. And so with years of research using many groups of people and using this kinesiology, this muscle testing to test these various questions he asked about levels of consciousness, he came up with this beautiful chart that shows all the levels of consciousness from, and he labeled them from 1 to 1,000 so that it was more easier to understand. And it ranges all the way from vegetation, the lower levels of consciousness, all the way up to the great spiritual avatars like Jesus, Krishna, and Buddha, who calibrated 1,000. And here's the really interesting thing about it. Okay, so I'll just give you some numbers. Under 200 is the negative range. 200 and over is the positive range. And optimism, which is 310, reason 400, love 500, joy 540, so it's even higher than love, and peace, which is 600, and enlightenment 700 to 1,000. And so one person, and this is what's so awesome, one person calibrating at the level of optimism, 310, counterbalances 90,000 people in the negative range. And it keeps stepping up. I don't want to read every single one to you, but then you get up to someone who is over 700 that counterbalances 70 million people. 70 million. And then 12, when he was writing the book, there were 12 people on the planet who calibrated at 700. And those 12 people were equal to one avatar at 1,000. So it's really important. What this speaks to me is, it reminds me of how important my spiritual practice is, how important it is for me to maintain the highest level of consciousness that I can, because it affects all of humanity. And I know that's why we're all here. I'm really clear that's why we've been drawn to the spiritual teaching, because we want to make a difference. We want to be that presence, that beneficial presence on the planet. And so it's just a higher call, a greater call to, in these times that seem so rocky, and you kind of one crisis overlaps the other, in what's going on the planet. It's so important that we watch our thoughts, that we do our spiritual practice, that we release our vibration. And we know how to do that. We know how to do that. We know it's meditation, we know it's visioning, we know it's journaling, we know it's yoga. There are all different modalities that we can do to raise our vibration. So the Maharishi experiments, I don't know how many of you have heard of those before? Yeah, Maharishi experiments conducted in many different cities worldwide actually proved this premise about counterbalancing. When you think about it, this premise, because groups of people would gather together and meditate for a period of time in a particular city, and there were statistically significant decreases in crime while they were just meditating on peace. They were just simply raising their vibration in that area. It's so powerful, and it's so important. So that's the idea of raising the vibration, and of course, cultivating inner joy is part of that, because we want to have a balanced life, and we know that joy, that playfulness, is something that really it feels good, just like peace does. And it's part of the continuum of emotions, of feelings that we get to experience. When the Hindus speak of creation, the creation of the universe, They don't call it the work of God. I know sometimes I've said that, the work of God. They call it the play of God. Creation is the play of God. They think they've got it. The play of God. So play then is sacred and holy. When we play, we leave behind our daily stressors and we breathe more freely and we are more open to creative flow. So I don't know how many of you remember a game called, or maybe you still have one, called Twister. Oh yeah! Well, just for a little recap, there's a spinner, and on the spinner are left foot, left hand, and right hand. And then in each of those quadrants are the four colors: red, yellow, blue, and green that go with each one. And so when you spin and it lands on something, it might say right hand, yellow. And so you can put your right hand on the yellow and you play it with other people. So it gets pretty interesting and pretty fun. Well, this is where our principles are going to come from today. The first thing that's really important is to have a good foundation, right? So if you have socks on that slippery plastic, you're going to fall. And so the first thing to do is to take off your socks and use your bare feet, because then you have really good traction. So that's like the first principle. And you say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, we also have to have a good foundation in our spirituality. And that's what we offer here. We offer a really good foundation in spiritual principles, universal laws, and practices, spiritual practices to cultivate those principles in our lives. So that's essential, and it also requires that we, just like you shed the socks, you shed error thinking, so that you can more fully reveal who you are in truth. And there's another opportunity this week, my friends. This has a class that's starting tomorrow night. It's not too late. We can just send you a digital copy of the curriculum, and you can join in, and it's on Zoom. So it's convenient. You can do it from your home. So I invite you to join in. Okay, up close and personal is the next. So it's a good foundation, using spiritual principles, learning about spiritual principles. Up close and personal is the next one. And so we know when we play this game, your arms and your legs are going under and over top of other people, and you can come up with some pretty funny postures in the process. And so how many of you have not dissolved into giggles where just everybody falls down when you have maybe your head in somebody's armpit, or some kind of crazy thing that's going on? So you just fall into giggles. It's so silly and so funny. And so playing Twister with God is the same kind of thing. And if we keep perspective, so when we're looking in the armpit of humanity, right? Can we keep that same perspective? That this is part of the game of life, and the higher we keep our vibration, those giggles and laughs and that kind of thing, the humor. I'm not saying to laugh at the suffering of other people. I don't mean that at all. But to keep our humor about the situation of life, about the absurdities of life, is so amazingly important. And so the next time we're looking in the armpit of humanity, I invite you to shift. Just ask yourself to shift in, I choose peace. I choose a higher perspective. I choose knowing what is mine to do. And so then we're guided by the very divine presence within us on what the next action is that we take. Right hand red, with blue. Whatever it is, and you translate that into whatever the action is that you're required or that you're being asked to do. We know that this tiny shift in consciousness, listening to our intuition, can lead to amazing changes in our consciousness, surprises, solutions, creative new ways of being that are so important on this planet. And so as we listen to that intuition within us, like the swimmer, right? Except it's real clear intuition just for us. This is an image I'd like to carry with you. The entire universe is swirling about you in a complementary dance, shifting us in a million tiny ways and holding us up at the same time. So that's up close and personal, getting up close and personal with God, and we do that with our spiritual practice and with our awareness, our present moment awareness. The next one is be ready to laugh. Players will often be required to put themselves in silly positions. If you are playing in a lighthearted way instead of a serious way, the serious way is competition, you will win, you know. But if you play in a lighthearted way, then laughter is available. Otherwise, you're so serious, and so you're playing this game, and you're all serious. And believe me, I've done that. Right, Dan? I've been in this competition, and so you play this game, and then there's no fun in it. And there's no fun in it. And isn't that the point of play anyway, of any kind, whether it's a board game or whatever it is? It's about joy. It's about being together and having fun. So Spirit created us, each one of us, with a vast potential for joy, vast capacity for joy. And play, therefore, is a sacred activity, absolutely necessary for our complete expression of life. It connects us to a sense of wonder and creativity. It heals our body, our mind, our emotions. It helps us to relate to others in a very healthy way. And it also helps us live with the mystery, the paradox, and the absurdity of life. And in the process, it can open doors to flexibility, vulnerability, intuition, and just that simple, childlike innocence that we so admire in our children. We can embody that as well. So, if you can believe that the creator that created the duck-billed platypus and the giraffe, the flamingo, the clownfish, and us, if you can believe that presence must have had a sense of humor, right? Then that is inherent in us. Humor is part of our nature. Joy is part of our nature. So whoever came up with the idea that spirituality was supposed to be so serious anyway? I mean, I can see moments when we're sitting in meditation. But even in meditation, there can be joy. Yes? I mean, bliss is supposed to be the ultimate of meditation. But I bought into that for a lot of years. I went to a traditional church, and for years I thought, when you're spiritual, you're very serious. You don't laugh. You do not laugh in church. That kind of thing. And so when I went to my first Science of Mind Center years ago, this was back in 1989, there was just laughter throughout the entire service. And I was like, wow, this is really awesome. This is amazing. So it really shifted me to a whole new paradigm. Spirituality can be fun. It can be fun. So here's the thing, if God is all there is, that's our teaching, right? Ernest Holmes says, then God sings all songs, dances all dances, paints all the pictures, creates all art, writes every book, and plays every game. Plays every game. Why? Because we are individualizations of that presence. We are representations of the divine in these body temples. The Greek word selig, silly, means silly. It also means blessed when it's translated into English. So here's my conclusion. Being silly is being blessed. And go back and think about the Dalai Lama again. Being silly is being blessed, and also it's blessing others. And Ernest Holmes says, if you are to know a God of joy, we must be joyful. Teilhard de Chardin tells us joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God. So, what does that say to you? This is what it says to me, is that when I'm being joyful and I'm playful and I'm being silly, then I'm being my highest God self. Yeah! Yeah, Jen, you buy into that. I know Jen's bought into that for a long time. Yeah. And we're so happy. We're so happy that you're a role model for that. All right, so what playful activity brings you joy? This is something for you to contemplate right now. What is it? If it's golfing, skiing, playing an instrument, dancing, singing, laughter yoga, skiing, art, biking, hiking, whatever it is, that is your calling for more play. So I'd like to share with you a story to bring this all to a close. And it's a story that I got from one of my colleagues. It's a story that starts with a man by the name of Brian. And when Brian's grandmother died, he sat down at the piano and played for the first time in 13 years. And the reason why he did that is because his grandmother said to him before she made her transition, I wish I had played more. I wish I had played more. So he found a YouTube video with instructions. Anybody do that? The instructions on how to play piano. And he started there, and then he decided, I'm going to take some lessons. I'm going to go to the local music school and take lessons. So he took lessons, and then within a very short period of time, they were going to have a winter recital. And so it was him and 14 little kids. And, initially he thought, and he said, no, I'm going for it. I've never been in a recital before. I'm going to do it. And so he chose a song that really moved him. And he played it. And then after it was all over, they were all going for some juice and goldfish. That's what it says, juice and goldfish. After recital. Snacks. A little girl came up to him and said, I'm going to be just like you when I grow up. And so the lesson that he got, his takeaway, was that you're never too old to play, to do that which brings you joy. So this week, guess what this week is about? I'm going to charge you with finding some playful activities to get engaged. Oh, I see Dean back there going like this. I'm so excited. To discover again more fully the wonder of play. To allow yourself, your vibrational frequency to rise, and to know that in the process of doing that, not only are you blessing yourself, you are blessing humanity by raising the bar on the vibrational frequency that is part of the collective on this planet. Counterbalancing thousands of people, maybe perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. So that's it for today. So then let's celebrate the unimaginable joy of playing Twist with God. And so it is!